This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 204. We are back from our Thanksgiving Day vacation. That's what we're going to call it. I'm not really sure if it was a vacation, but that's what we're going to call it. We were off last week. We're back this week. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. In this week's episode, we've got a ton to get to, especially since we took a week off. We got some big names in AEW that could see their contracts expire or be extended. Got the lowdown on that, as well as, does anybody remember a guy named Elias? Well, we've got the backstage story on what's taking place with him, as well as some NXT contracts that could be coming up. Of course, we're going to get into all the biggest news and trends in the wrestling industry. I've got a very interesting question to propose to the Doc. And, you know, the Doc is here doing it with me as always. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
It's all good, baby. I'm excited. Yeah, we needed a Thanksgiving break. Had an opportunity to sit and watch Raw, NXT, and AEW. Oh my goodness, the shows are off the chains. Maybe a little bit more disappointment on the Smackdown side, but I think that's based on the potential. Brock and his man bun has still impressed many in our chat group. I can't wait to break it all down. Got to take my lumps this season in the picks. I think it's going to be a foregone conclusion. Like that Roman Reigns is going to be the title holder for a while, and Big E, that you're going to win it. You did great. Survivor Series went down pretty much how we thought, except for the fact that I did not end up defeating and overtaking you, so it probably ends my bid to win this season. But well-deserved. I think that you've done a great job. Just to recap real quickly, what did you make of the Survivor Series? I thought it was okay for a show, maybe on a tad long side.
Yeah, I thought it was okay, too. I mean, if we had to give it like a grade A, B, C, D, E, F, I would probably go more along the lines of a C, C minus. I did think it was a little bit long. Look, this show had absolutely zero build, and we're coming back a week later to kind of discuss it. I mean, it was one of those things where I think we both feel obligated to do this because of what we do with this show. But I don't think it's one of those shows where if you missed it, you need to go back and see it. I think arguably some of the best matches you had of the evening, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, I thought that was a really good match. I thought what you had with RK Bro and the Usos was a pretty good match. And in the end, Roman Reigns defeats Big E. It was a good match. I mean, like, I don't think any of us expected Big E to win that match, but it was what it was. With the picks, I got 5 out of 7. You got 4 out of 7. We each got a bonus point for picking Bianca Belair as the surviving and remaining member of Team Smackdown. Right now, I do have a bit of a 7-point lead on you, as it's 12-5. So we'll kind of see where this goes. I think after we get through about 20 of these, right? After the combined score between both of us is 20 points, I think we hit the reset button. So not much more, maybe 3 more pay-per-views, and then we'll hit the reset button and we'll start all over, and we'll kind of go from there. But let's move on from Survivor Series. That was a couple weeks ago. It was an okay show. I don't think anybody really missed anything. Let's get into this week's Monday Night Raw. And I think the thing that me and you talked about the most was the promo between Edge and the return of Miz. I thought this was a pretty bombastic promo here. What did you make of this? In this promo, you have Edge basically calling out AEW, and you've got Edge calling out Miz for going away and doing different shows while his best friend gets fired. His words exactly. Your best friend gets fired. What did you make of this?
Oh, I first obviously love to see the fact that Edge runs down the setup. The Edge runs down the list of potential matches he wants to have. AJ Styles. I was like, oh yes, I'll take a heavy dose of that. And then the Miz music hits, and I popped. It was cool. It was like, yeah, finally the Miz. And then he brings Maurice, which is A++. I think Miz and Maurice is the way you got to go. And their outfit was stunning, and their return was absolutely perfect. But here's the problem. Concise. This is ADHD society. It's like they've forgotten. WWE just forgets that our attention spans are like nothing. So I'm like, come on, can you just get to the stuff that you want to get to? And it goes on and on and on. Now, Edge, I think, carried it a lot better than The Miz did, in my opinion, where he brought up AEW, mentioning The Miz for a cheap pop and things like that. So it was great to hear that little bit of inside information based on the fact that we watched both shows. It's great. You're going to have The Miz and Edge kind of go down a feud, and I think this is a perfect scenario where The Miz has to go over. Just too long. You got to concise. 6 to 8 minutes. You got to find that sweet spot, because then it just goes on and on and on. When you hit 9, 10, 11 minutes, and you're just kind of going back and forth, I think the crowd even sensed that. Let's get this moving. Promos in today's age gotta be less than 10 minutes, just in and out. And I know you're feeling time, top of the hour. That's where they say that ratings are well. But in my opinion, you can enhance it by getting in and out, maybe even going to a 6-minute promo and then highlighting somebody else for 2 minutes in a promo fashion, but just somebody else. So in my mind, it came off well, but I just think that it's just a little bit too long. But I'm excited. Edge, Miz, that's something to pay to see.
And like, this is the thing with WWE too. They love their 15-minute promos. They will open a show with a 15, 20-minute promo, and we're just kind of sitting on our hands and feet and edges of our seat like, okay, when's the fighting going to start? When's the wrestling match going to start? And it's just guys jaw-jacking each other. You're right. The promos in WWE are way too long, and I think what you end up getting is you get this filler promo. You get there's just filler words, and they're just kind of stretching for time. And if you've ever been put in a spot where you have to kind of stretch for time and kind of fill, it's awful, because what comes out is totally unnecessary. It doesn't have to be said. And it kind of devalues the rest of the words that were already put in that had the most impact and the most emphasis. So you're right. It's just a little bit too long. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. I think this is one of those ones where The Miz should probably go over. I mean, it's cool to see Edge win these matches. It gives that little throwback to nostalgia. But at some point, who are you going to base your company around, right? I don't think Edge is one of those guys that you build your company around at this point. The Miz is obviously a guy who has been there. He's done that. He has, for lack of a better term, he has been the John Cena since John Cena has left. He's been the guy who has done a ton of things and has been one of those guys who keeps it all together, and he's a draw. I'm not going to say he does it to the level that John Cena has done it, but he's one of those guys who has kept it all together. He was one of those guys after John Cena left to go do Hollywood things. He was the guy who basically rose to the top and has kept it all together. And I don't think The Miz gets enough credit for a lot of that. Now, another guy who basically sells out arenas and gets all of us talking, it's Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar made his return to SmackDown, and I want to get your sense of what you make of this good guy Brock. It was weird watching him cut his own promo. I thought he did a good job. I mean, he did have a guy to go off of with Sami Zayn, who came down and interrupted him very early on. But him manipulating Sami Zayn, whether it be by physical force or by mental gymnastics, to take on a number one contenders match on Friday night, I thought was really fun to watch. I thought it was interesting. Good guy Brock has me uncomfortable, because you know he's not like a real good guy, but compared to Roman Reigns, he is. And babyface Brock with his man bun, I find to be super interesting, and I find this to be one of the more compelling stories on SmackDown. What did you make of good guy Brock showing up on SmackDown this week?
It just lends to the question: how does this play out? Because of the fact that Brock Lesnar is main event. He's part-time though, so how does this work in regards to his spot on the show? So I take it that, okay, Roman Reigns is the top heel, so you want to make Brock Lesnar the guy that people cheer for. He's a badass. So with that sense, do you then have a face run of Brock Lesnar with a title? Maybe. Is the next guy to take the belt off of Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar? It's believable. I just want to see where this goes. Does he form an alliance? Does he help out? Does he just turn the tide? Kind of more of the I want to give back kind of situation. I'm just fascinated to see it. Dude, it's just crazy that some people just have it. When Brock Lesnar comes out in his man bun, you want to watch. Whatever's going on. I know his moveset's limited, but hey, I think the perfect foil was Sami Zayn. Him getting body slam was funny. And Sami Zayn, give him credit. I don't think enough people give him credit for this character that he kind of morphed into. I like the older one better than this one, but this one's doing okay in regards to the fact that it's annoying and it gets under people's skin. And this whole me against the company conspiracy theory shit is funny when he does the promos. And so for him to get slammed, I thought was awesome. And I just think that Sami Zayn is somebody that is believable in the ring to stand across Brock Lesnar. You don't have too many of those. And I thought it was funny. I popped for it. It was a good segment.
You know, watching that whole thing unfold, I said out loud, I said, man, I kind of feel bad for Sami Zayn. Because Sami Zayn, if you watched any of his work when he was in ROH, any of his work before he got called to WWE, when he was El Generico, and I know we make jokes about how many matches him and Kevin Owens have. I think right now the counter is at 1,472,536, if I'm looking at the counter right. But they've had a ton of matches. But they were great. They were really, really good. Sami Zayn can move in the ring. Sami Zayn can cut a promo. Sami Zayn has it. But I feel like his work in WWE, it's either been comedic or it's been undermined by different politics that have gone on in the office, or it's been undermined maybe even by himself. I just don't feel like his run in WWE is where it should be. And you're right. I do feel like he can stand in a ring across from Brock Lesnar, and I think they can. What they did on Friday night, I thought it worked out well. I mean, let me put it to you like this. When you say Brock Lesnar is a guy who has it, I ended up going to a Dan and Shay concert on Friday night. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit sad that I missed Brock Lesnar live. I was a little bit upset that I missed Brock Lesnar opening the show. You know, I had to watch that on DVR. I didn't get to watch it live, and I was a little bit upset about it. Now, granted, Dan and Shay was fantastic, and it basically filled the void of Brock Lesnar. But that being said, he is a guy who is must-watch TV. He's absolutely fantastic. Was there anything else on the WWE side before we move on? Because I want to get your review of Impact. It looks like we had a monster appearance on Impact. Was there anything else on the WWE side that struck your eye this week?
No, I think it's great because all you have to do is just grab some tequila and, hang out and do your thing, man. I don't know. I think that watching wrestling with a little bit of tequila will handle your business and make you enjoy a night. So I don't know what you're talking about in that realm. I'm definitely watching wrestling and enjoying Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. Dude, Roman Reigns' entrance music is legit. I love seeing
his entrance is fantastic.
It's just, I at first, to be honest, said to myself, I loved Roman Reigns' first entrance music really well with the Shield and the bombastic nature. But this one, the way in which it allows Roman to kind of just stand there and the beat keeps hitting and the way in which it's orchestrated, it's really big time effort there. So SmackDown was okay, but I think that the part that I think has disappointed some supporters as well as myself, first and foremost, you throw a pie in Charlotte's face, it's always going to produce hilarity. I think Toni Storm and Charlotte, their kind of angle is okay. Oh. But besides that, I'm
so glad you brought up Toni Storm.
I do. But I just want to say this. I want to say this, though. I just think in general, because of the talent level on SmackDown, I feel like the angles are falling short in regards to interest. That one is good. Roman Reigns is good. But besides that, I feel like SmackDown needs some building in regards to bridging the angles post-Survivor Series.
I want to talk about Toni Storm real quick. For forever and a day, I would bag on Toni Storm. I would call her the human pear. Toni Storm has gotten herself into such good physical shape, and it might not even be healthy at this point because it looks like she has lost a person or at least a 70-pound child. Her physique has morphed so dramatically. It's eye-catching for one, and two, I'm just kind of like, how did you do that? And why did you do that? Because it wasn't like Toni Storm was a bad-looking chick. I just thought she looked like a pear. She's still hippie. She's got some hips, but like her arms, her shoulders, everything is so toned down and so leaned out. I honestly, I am a little bit concerned. I don't know if it's healthy. I mean, maybe it is. And if it is, great for her for being able to train as hard as she did to get there. But she looks so dramatically different. To me, it doesn't feel like it was this gradual thing. Maybe it's just because she's been off TV for so long, but it is crazy. Her physical appearance from where it was, we'll say 3 months ago to where it is today. Absolutely eye-popping and mind-blowing in my estimation. All right. What did you make of Impact?
Yeah, man, it was good. Coming off of their pay-per-view, they wanted to establish kind of the main event as to what kind of we're going to see for the future. So I was definitely impressed. I think if you didn't get a chance, check out Turning Point. I think it was very good. You had a great match between, I think you had Cardona and Morrissey handling business, doing some things, and Moose continues to be the Impact World Champion. I think the tone of this week's show was to kind of establish the next in line for Moose. And I thought the main event with Matt Cardona and Eddie Edwards taking on Moose and William Morrissey, I thought was really good. In the end, Cardona and Edwards get the W. But what ends up happening is that Morrissey gives the boot to his tag team partner, Moose, and delivering that big boot gets him into title contention, creating a three-way program potentially for the top prize. I think that seeing the likes of Matt Cardona, Eddie Edwards, seeing the likes of Moose, Moose is destined to fight Josh Alexander down the road, but it's great to kind of use Impact to establish Morrissey and Cardona as the next credible contenders, and I think that's the way to go. Moose has done a good job in his early run as the champion, and I thought the Impact show coming off of Turning Point was stellar. I think that you're starting to see the mid-card kind of elevate. You're starting to see the likes of Chris Sabin take the next step as he got over and got a W on Impact. I was pleasantly surprised by the Jonah versus Jai Vidal match with Jonah getting over. I thought it was great. I thought the females kind of held their own a little bit. The Rachel Ellering versus Savannah Evans match could have been better in regards to timing and everything like that, but still decent to get the women over. A highlight after the main event was Violent by Design taking on Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Swann and Mack got over, and you recognize that, the mid-card and tag teams can really start the process of bridging the show in an hour 1 and 2. So I thought the show overall was well. You really are starting to see the likes of Matt Cardona, Eddie Edwards, Moose, William Morrissey start to kind of distance themselves from the rest, and I want to see how this progresses as they move forward in regards to the main event picture. I think Moose has done a great job, former NFL talent. William Morrissey, I think, is a champ in waiting. And then Matt Cardona getting his opportunity to keep getting over, and he's in great shape was something that impressed me.
Awesome. Did we have any big appearances? Was there anything that was a little bit mind-blowing? I'm bringing this up because I didn't get a chance to take in Impact this week. And most weeks I lean on your review of Impact to kind of keep up with what's going on. And I seen a thumbnail on one of the sites that I go to grab information, and it looked as though former NXT, former WWE big man Bronson Reed might have made an appearance. So I was just checking in to see, because here's the deal. He was supposed to be at their last pay-per-view. He was actually supposed to be, I believe, at 2 pay-per-views ago. He was supposed to make an appearance. Some things happened. Things didn't really work out. He couldn't show up for the pay-per-view. And because of that, they continued their discussions. They continued their talks. And he's supposed to make an appearance on Impact. And I was wondering if that was this week. So if he hasn't yet, everybody pay attention. He's former NXT wrestler Bronson Reed should be making an impact on Impact.
Absolutely. Sorry, I glossed over it. In the matchup, yes, Bronson Reed. I forget that not everybody is a smart mark as myself. That was the former individual known as Bronson Reed is now Jonah.
Okay.
So
awesome.
He made, yes, it was awesome. And Jonah pummeled, manhandled, and eventually got the W. So I think that, the way in which Impact did it made him feel like a much bigger deal than he already was in NXT. So a dangerous threat. I think that the way in which he was presented, I think, will leave a lot of people impressed. Sorry, I didn't elaborate. But yes, Bronson Reed made his debut at Impact, and he's an individual that is now going to be somebody that I think, because of the fact that I guess the way in which I looked at it is he's a big deal, but NXT kind of toward his end didn't make him as big a deal. You know what I mean? Kind of halted his progress. So now in Impact, I think his debut was very, very stellar.
And that's on me. Honestly, I need to pay a little bit more attention to Impact. I just struggle sometimes to find the channel, and sometimes I don't have the channel.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
But you and I do have ways of watching wrestling when we don't have channels. So I should spend more time. I apologize. That is on me. I do want to transition over to AEW. And our buddy Kenny. And one day I would love to be able to do this with Kenny. We're just the three of us just kind of sit around and kind of spitball and just do a wrestling podcast talking about things. Because I think Kenny has a brilliant mind. Not just for wrestling, but just in general. Kenny has one of those. It's sometimes very abstract, and sometimes it's incredibly intelligent. I think Kenny is one of these smarter wrestling fans. I think Kenny is a hyper intelligent wrestling fan, and I think he has a really interesting thought on what's going on with Cody Rhodes right now. And I wanted to bring this up. He did put it out there on our Twitter at Detroit Podcast. You can go check that out. Him and friend of the show, Adam Selgett, had a nice little discussion about it. And he's brought it up a couple of times. And he's now put it out there. So I want to bring this to the table and I want to talk about it because I find it to be a superior take. I find it to be a hyper intelligent, incredibly smart Mark take, but I don't know if it works because I don't know if your average wrestling fan would get it. And you have to remember when you program these shows, you're kind of programming for the average wrestling fan. There are some things that you do for the smart Mark, and there's some things that you do for the wrestling fan that has been there forever. Like in this past week's match on Dynamite, Cody Rhodes grabs a sledgehammer, looks at it, and then throws it to the side. That was a shot at Triple H. So there are things that get done that are for the smart Mark, but the overall storyline is usually for the casual wrestling fan. So the person who is tuning in can kind of pick up what's going on. But Kenny has this really, really interesting take on what is going on with Cody Rhodes. And I find it to be fascinating. And if this was the case, or if this is the case, I think this could be one of those angles where you're just like, holy shit, that is absolutely amazing. Kenny's take on Cody Rhodes is this. And like I said, I find it to be brilliant, but I just don't know if it works. And I want to kind of unravel this with you. And I wish we had Kenny on right now so we could unravel it with him. Cody Rhodes, in Kenny's estimation, is actually a heel. Cody Rhodes, to everybody else, and only in his mind, is a face. Cody believes he is a face, but all of his actions and most of what he is doing is more based on heel. So he's this weird gray area, more heel than he is face. In Cody's estimation, he is the babiest of baby faces. He is so white meat, but he's not. And I find that to be, like I said, I find that to be, one, interesting. Two, if you could pull this off, I think it is great. It basically shows Cody is delusional right now, and the way he is wrestling is nuts. And this week, on what we've seen with Dynamite, Kenny points out that a babyface would not have his wife come down to the ring, spray the top of a table with lighter fluid, then set it on fire and throw the heel through that. And that's an astute take. That is actually factual. Babyfaces don't do those things. Babyfaces find other ways to overcome and win. Even if they're in a street fight, they don't do things that dastardly. Some of the things that Cody Rhodes has done in the past, a lot of times using his belt to smack an opponent. Babyfaces don't do those things. Babyfaces don't use weapons. There are things that have unfolded over the past couple of weeks, especially with Cody getting booed and ripped apart, that babyfaces don't do. What's your take on all of this? Is Cody Rhodes actually a heel, but in his mind, he is the white meat babyface of AEW? Or is Cody more just kind of this gray character, and this is kind of what it is? And he's taking on guys like Andrade and slamming them through tables. And I don't know if you've seen Cody's back. You can go to, I believe it's his Instagram. You can go check it out. And his back is brutal after going through that table. That was kind of a missed spot, I think. I really do feel like Andrade probably should have got most of that. Instead, Cody took all of it. And then the the hot melted plastic from the edge of the table really burned Cody's back pretty bad. But what's your take on Cody Rhodes and where he's at right now?
Yeah, I'm conflicted because as wrestling fans, we get used to wanting a wrestler either to be a heel or a babyface. But what's wrong with it? The way it is. I think the way it is just fine. I think Cody Rhodes needs to kind of start moving his way up the ladder. I mean, it's hard because you get a sense that, is this guy like intentionally putting himself to the side? For what reason? This is 3 years in. I think that the next step should be maybe to fall in line maybe with a title shot, a feud with Hangman Page, maybe even a feud with Bryan Danielson. I think that it might behoove the likes of Cody Rhodes, maybe not to focus so much on character development, but I think matches that he gets involved in. Did you really feel like he needed to be involved in a match with Andrade? Yeah, you're tying up storylines. Yeah, you're doing things and things like that. But it's hard because very rarely in the world of wrestling do you have really a guy that could be a main eventer willfully being in the mid-card. Like, the guy is talented. The guy can wrestle. The guy can cut promos. And I know he's kind of doing the executive thing, taking time off with the family, so he's not yet committed to the full-time schedule like a Hangman or a CM Punk or things like that. But I just want to see him in a little bit more engaging feuds. And for me, I don't think that he's portraying something that he's not. This is Cody Rhodes. A little bit of both, a little bit of willingness to do some heel type stuff. A couple weeks back, I thought there was a funny situation where he was in a tag match. He throws his belt into the crowd. And the crowd throws it back, and it was weird because it was like confusing. Like, everyone was like, "Why would somebody throw it back?" And the crowd was all into it, and he puts it back on and then throws it again. So I think there are heel tactics that you see, but bottom line, he's a great draw. I just need to see him a little bit more up there in the main event scene. I hope that whatever is holding him back, whether it's self or the humbleness to put others over, I think it's time for Cody to kind of start getting into the main event type stuff. Hell, even if you have a transitional feud, I know Omega's taking time off. When he comes back, I would love to see Cody Rhodes and Omega dust it up and do some things. Or hell, even the likes of, just upper echelon of AEW needs to get in there with Cody Rhodes. Andrade's great. Listen, that was a great spot. Did you think it was a botch? I think that, I guess for safety purposes, those online are saying the same thing. But isn't the real pop where Andrade has his ass through the table a lot more than Cody Rhodes, or is he just not able to execute that with the level of fire that was on the table?
I don't know. I feel like the table had been a little bit too close, and maybe they underestimated how far away they were. And I feel like both of them should have gone through that. Andrade missed that table completely. That was all Cody going through that table. So I'm not 100% sure it was. I just don't think the table was set up in the right spot. I think it was just a little bit too close. I think it needed to be moved away. Now, you brought up something interesting. You think Cody Rhodes should be moving his way up towards the top. How much of his initial, like when AEW first started, if I don't win this match, I will never challenge for the AEW championship. I believe that was he? I think he was facing Chris Jericho at the time. And that was when MJF turned on him. How much of that do you think plays into where he's kind of at? Because at this point on the card, and there was about a year and a half there where Cody Rhodes had the best matches in AEW. He carried that company for probably a solid 18 months with what he was doing in the ring. How much of what I said before has now kind of locked me into this mid-card, lower end part of the card where I really can't rise above this because he's trying to hold true to that word of never challenging for the AEW championship?
I don't care. Figure out a way to get out of that. The guy deserves a lot more.
He says, wrestling be damned, retcon this shit. Let's go.
Yeah. You have stuff happens that makes no sense. Just undo it.
It happens all the time.
Just undo it. He deserves it. The guy is popular. The guy can do a lot. It is a slow build, and I get it. Hangman Page's time, Danielson's time, CM Punk, understood Eddie, Kingston's time, but you got to mix in the likes of Cody Rhodes just a little bit higher, and hell, even elevate Andrade. I think you could do a lot more with him in his gimmick, and let's make it happen.
I'm not opposed to it. at some point, I think we both believe that Cody Rhodes should or will challenge for the AEW championship. I'm not sure what is going on with that entire situation, right? I find Cody Rhodes' role in AEW to probably be the most fascinating, especially since I think it was about a year and a half ago. Rumors came out that there was some tension between Cody and basically everybody in the elite. Cody has basically removed himself at the very start of AEW, removed himself from any type of championship contention for the AEW World Championship. Cody has, like I said, for about an 18-month span there, put on the absolute best matches in AEW. And at some point now, the fans have kind of turned on him. And I think he's almost in that John Cena role where he's supposed to be the babyface, but he is booed like a heel. And I think he's embracing it. And it's a little bit weird. So I don't know. I find what's going to transpire with Cody Rhodes probably over the next 6 months will kind of set the tone, and I think we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I thought Kenny's take on it was super interesting. I thought we maybe needed to discuss it and just kind of put it out there because I don't think it works for the average wrestling fan. I think it works for people who tune in every single week and people who watch wrestling religiously. I think it works for them. But if you are just kind of tuning in and you're just trying to grab a viewer, I don't think it necessarily works. I think if Kenny's theory that Cody Rhodes is a babyface, but only in his mind, while his actions are more gray and more heel than face, I think if you can pull that off and execute it, I think it is one of the best stories in AEW going right now. And I just thought we should talk about it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Cody Rhodes going forward.
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What you got, cuz?
So sticking with AEW, some big names in AEW could reportedly see their contracts expire soon. Now, according to Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer, many of the wrestlers who have been signed with AEW from the start have contracts that run through December 31st of 2021. Now, although the deals include 2 optional years as well, that means AEW President Tony Khan can exercise the option which would take the contracts through December 31st of 2023. Meltzer noted that Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Brandy Rhodes, and AEW World Champion Hangman Adam Page are among those who fit into that particular category. Now, the Young Bucks also would have been part of that group, but Meltzer reported that Khan already picked up the 2-year option on their contract. Now, it is possible for some AEW wrestlers with expiring contracts, they could become free agents at the end of the year. Meltzer wrote that he would expect all of their options to be picked up for the wrestlers that were just named. Sticking with some contract rumors, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reported negotiations between Johnny Gargano and WWE officials began back in October as the company is looking to keep the former NXT champion on board. He continued, WWE wants to keep him on board and applauded his work with The Way before the group split, even mentioning that he helped progress several new stars even if he doesn't leave. Remember, Gargano was key in the development of both Austin Theory and Indy Hartwell. Austin Theory has now been called up to the main roster. Slap also this week had a report on Kyle O'Reilly and his contract. His contract is set to expire before the end of the year, earlier than many thought. However, this was not a surprise to WWE. As they looked over their contracts this summer after the Pete Dunne and Adam Cole deals all came due in surprising fashion, WWE has an interest in re-signing O'Reilly, the report stated, and the company officials have reached out to him on the matter. I don't know what's going to happen with Kyle O'Reilly. In my estimation, AEW might be a better spot for him. You can go back, you can team with Bobby Fish. If you watched anything in ROH, their most success came as a tag team. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with those two guys going forward. Sticking with NXT, WWE Hall of Famer Beth Phoenix announced Thursday that she'll be stepping away from the NXT broadcast team following Sunday's NXT War Games pay-per-view. Phoenix released a statement regarding the decision on her Twitter, citing a desire to spend more time with her family. Now, some rumors are swirling as you've seen Miz and Maurice. Maurice is back on WWE. Rumors are swirling that she may be joining Edge, and you may end up getting a husband and wife tag team match between Miz and Maurice and Edge and Beth Phoenix. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. So I've looked on milk cartons. I put an APB out. I've been searching for Elias. Everybody remember Elias? Remember him? Well, we have updates. and we kind of understand a little bit about what's going on with his WWE status and why we haven't seen him. It turns out he had plans, and the gimmick has been scrapped and changed. Months ago, WWE aired a bunch of vignettes in a graveyard. The last one ended by telling us that Elias was dead. Now, WrestleVotes reports that there was no end plan for those, and it was simply a way to kill off the musician's gimmick. But what was next? It has been noted that a plan for initially rebranding a number of weeks ago had Elias looking similar to Macho Man Randy Savage, coming out with colorful trunks and a beard. Now, Vince didn't really like this, so it's been back to square one for Elias. At this point, there's really no gimmick for Elias. There's nothing really going in the works for him. I think if you were to do a vintage Macho Man Randy Savage, I think if there was one dude who could pull it off, Elias could pull that off. But I don't really think that you should have a current wrestler looking like one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, in my estimation. But it's weird. Elias doesn't have a gimmick right now. He's basically sitting him back in catering while creative kind of spins its wheels. And that's it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Yeah, you hope that Elias doesn't fall by the wayside, but unfortunately, this is what happens in WWE. Such a big company, he's just a piece in the cog, and maybe his time has run out in regards to the top end creative endeavors and work with the creative team. But we'll see. A gimmickless wrestler, real interesting, especially with a guy that was talented. But how far can you go with a guy that plays the guitar and kind of has the same situation and things like that? So we'll see. You know, maybe he's got to hit the tequila and maybe hit the road with some artists. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe he'll create some tequila. We'll see what happens in regards to how he progresses. But we'll see. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure that anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our daily content will find you. As Michigan endeavors to potentially their way to the college football playoff, the Detroit Lions, Tigers making big news. Lots of great stuff happening in the world of Detroit sports always, and make sure you stay tuned to Detroit Sports Podcast. Like and leave a review anytime you listen to a broadcast. That's how we continue to spread the word. Thanks, cuz, very much. I appreciate your time. I always enjoy talking, rapping about wrestling and seeing how these promoters are getting down. So we'll see as the feuds continue how these promos, these digs at each other, how this progresses moving forward. And let's see about these contracts. Could WWE just make a splash and just take somebody just because and make them a star? We shall see. Thanks, cuz, and I can't wait to broadcast next week on the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.